who lives by cooking and eating the flesh of the dog is immediately purified if he takes bath in hearing through the ear the glorification of my name, fame, etc. This, of course, is Krishna is speaking. Now you have realized me without doubt. Therefore, I will not hesitate to lop off my own arm if its conduct is found hostile to you. Whoa, what a statement by Krishna. Purport by His Divine Grace, Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Real purification can take place in human society if its members take to Krishna consciousness. This is clearly stated in all Vedic literature. Anyone who takes to Krishna consciousness in all sincerity, even if he is not very advanced in good behavior, is purified. A devotee can be recruited from any section of human society, although it is not expected that everyone in all segments of society is well behaved, as stated in this verse and in many places in Bhagavad Gita. Even if one is not born in a Brahmana family, or even if he is born in a family of Chandalas, if he simply takes to Krishna consciousness, he is immediately purified. In Bhagavad Gita, 9th chapter, verses 30 to 32, it is clearly stated that even though a man is not well behaved, if he simply takes to Krishna consciousness, he's understood to be a saintly person. As long as a person is in this material world, he has two different relationships in his dealings with others. 1 second. Sorry. As far as bodily affairs or social activities are concerned, although a person is purified on the spiritual platform, it is sometimes seen that he acts in terms of his bodily relationships. If a devotee born in the family of a Chandala, the lowest caste, is sometimes found engaged in his habitual activities, he is not to be considered a Chandala. In other words, a Vaishnava should not be evaluated in terms of his body. The Shastra states that no one should think the deity in the temple to be made of wood or stone, and no one should think that a person coming from a lower caste family who has taken to Krishna consciousness is still of the same low caste. These attitudes are forbidden because anyone who takes to Krishna consciousness is understood to be fully purified. He is at least engaged in the process of purification, and if he sticks to the principle of Krishna consciousness, he will very soon be fully purified. The conclusion is that if one takes the Krishna consciousness with all seriousness, he is to be understood as already purified, and Krishna is ready to give him protection by all means. The Lord assures herein that he is ready to give protection to his devotee, even if there is need to cut off part of his own body. That's a pretty serious statement. The Lord is ready to cut off his own body. Uh, in other words, the devotee is always going to be given, Hare Krishna, to give protection by all means. The Lord assures herein that he is ready to give protection to his devotee, even if there is a need to cut off part of his own body. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay, so this is very interesting. Anyone in the entire world, even down to the Chandala, who lives by cooking and eating the flesh of the dog, is immediately purified if he takes bath in hearing through the ear the glorification of my name, fame, etc. So that's the real bath, being purified through the ear by hearing the glorification of Krishna's name, fame, and all kinds of pastimes of the Lord, etc. Now you have realized me without doubt. This is Krishna saying this to the Kumaras. Therefore, I will not hesitate to lop off my own arm, in other words, cut off my own arm, if its conduct is found hostile to you. That's a pretty serious statement. Okay, so uh, Krishna consciousness is open to everyone, and we don't prejudge people. Uh, if someone is willing to follow instructions and follow the principles of Krishna consciousness, it doesn't matter what their background is. They can be purified and they should be considered a devotee and not criticized for coming from a low family or a high family. It doesn't matter. So, and therefore, Krishna says very emphatically, the conclusion is that if one takes the Krishna consciousness with all seriousness, he is to be understood as already purified. And Krishna is ready to give him protection by all means. The Lord assures herein that he is ready to give protection to his devotee, even if there is need to cut off part of his own body. And that's a pretty serious statement right there. That just shows how much Krishna is anxious for us to become devotees and to go back to Godhead, to do service and then go back to Godhead. And if necessary, if he has to cut off a part of his own body, he will, and to help the devotee in every way to do good service and go back to Godhead. Okay, text number 7. The Lord continued, because I am the servitor of my devotees, my lotus feet have become so sacred that they immediately wipe out all sin. And I have acquired such a disposition that the goddess of fortune does not leave me, even though I have no attachment for her, and others praise her beauty and observe sacred vows to secure from her even a slight favor. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. This is text number 7. The relationship between the Lord and his devotee is transcendently beautiful, as the devotee thinks that it is due to being as the devotee thinks that it is due to being a devotee of the Lord that he is elevated in all good qualities. So the Lord also thinks that it is because of his meaning Krishna's devotion to the servitor that all his meaning Krishna's transcendental glories have increased. In other words, as the devotee is always anxious to render service to the Lord, so the Lord is ever anxious to render service to the devotee. The Lord admits herein that although he certainly has the quality that anyone who receives a slight particle of the dust of his lotus feet becomes at once a great personality, this greatness is due to his affection for his devotee. It is because of this affection that the goddess of fortune does not leave him, and that not only one, but many thousands of goddesses of fortune engage in his service. In the material world, simply to get a little favor from the goddess of fortune, people observe many rigid regulations of austerity and penance. The Lord cannot tolerate any inconvenience on the part of the devotee. He is therefore famous as Bhaktavatsala. Bhaktavatsala means he is very favorable to his devotee, do anything to help the devotee. Okay, so there's a lot of wonderful statements in this purport. Let's take a look at it one more time. First of all, Krishna says to the four Kumaras that he is the servitor of my devotees. Now, usually you think the devotees are the servants of Krishna, but Krishna here is saying that he's the servitor of my devotees. And then he says, my lotus feet have become so sacred that they, meaning lotus feet, immediately wipe out all sin. And that's why it's important that when you approach the deity, you should begin by looking at the lotus feet of the deity and then gradually go up, not directly uh, start looking at the face of the deity. Why? Because my lotus feet have become so sacred that they immediately wipe out all sin. And I have acquired such a disposition that the goddess of fortune does not leave me, even though I have no attachment for her. Others praise her beauty and observe sacred vows to secure from her even a slight favor. Well, this is an important statement also because one should not be attracted by the body of a person, but they should be uh, respectful of the uh, service of a person. When you look at the body, we should never criticize a person as a bad body. Let's say that they're deformed or they have some congenital disease or something like that. And one should not be over, let's say, interested in seeing a person who has a nice body. Uh, One should be always uh, concerned about getting the mercy of a devotee, uh, beginning from the lotus feet of the devotee. Or it could be a girl, or we should not really be interested in uh, any, let's say, part of the body of a woman. We should be more interested in hearing uh, and chanting the holy names of the Lord. Okay, so Prabhupada says that the relationship between the Lord and his devotee is transcendently beautiful. As the devotee thinks that it is due to being a devotee of the Lord that he is elevated in all good qualities. So the Lord also thinks that it is because of his devotion to the servitor, to the devotee, in other words, that all his transcendental glories have increased. In other words, as a devotee is always anxious to render service to the Lord, so the Lord is ever anxious to render service to the devotee. The Lord admits herein that although he certainly has the quality that anyone who receives a slight particle of the dust of his lotus feet becomes at once a great personality, this greatness is due to his affection for his devotee. It is because of this affection that the goddess of fortune does not leave him, and that not only one, but many thousands of goddesses of fortune engage in his service. In the material world, simply to get a little favor from the goddess of fortune, people observe many rigid regulations of austerity and penance. The Lord cannot tolerate any inconvenience on the part of the devotee. He is therefore famous as Bhaktavatsal, friend of the devotee. Well, this is a profound statement because the whole relationship of the servant and the master is based on affection and love. Now, usually in the material world, when you hear that somebody is a master, someone's a servant, it's more or less, the master is someone who's exploiting the servant. And it's not really, one of love. But in Krishna consciousness, because the devotee gradually develops love for Krishna, Krishna develops very, very, let's say, loving relationship with the devotee. So and it's this affection for his devotee uh, makes everything transcendentally wonderful. And that's why Prabhupada says, the Lord admits herein that although he certainly has the quality that anyone who receives a slight particle of the dust of his lotus feet becomes at once a great personality, this greatness is due to his affection for his devotee. It is because of this affection that the goddess of fortune does not leave him, meaning Krishna, and that not only one, but many thousands of goddesses of fortune engage in his service. In the material world, simply to get a little favor from the goddess of fortune, people observe many rigid regulations of austerity and penance. Okay, so uh, it's very difficult in the material world to develop genuine affection or love uh, for anybody because it's usually not love, it's usually lust for sense gratification. Here we're talking about love, and real love is based on unimaginable sacrifice. Uh, so when we're willing to sacrifice everything to please Krishna and the spiritual master, now you're bordering on the on pure love. And as that relationship gets stronger and stronger, it actually becomes pure, unalloyed love and devotion. It's very important that we learn how to love someone uh, through Krishna consciousness, not through bodily attraction, but through Krishna consciousness. So in the material world, there are body-to-body relationships, and in the spiritual world, there's soul-to-soul relationship. The developing soul-to-soul relationship is the goal of the devotees. So, so sometimes you hear people say, "Well, this is my soul mate," right? But that doesn't really mean that much. But the soul-to-soul relationship means that you're not actually looking at the body of the person. You're looking at the fact that Krishna is in the heart of that person and is in your heart also. It is in my heart also, and your heart also. And therefore, there has to be the same respect given that we also give to the deity in the temple. When we go to the temple, we bow down to the deity, and because the deity is Krishna. And the same way, when we see another person, we don't actually see them as devotees. We see the fact that God is present in their heart, or Krishna is present in the heart, and we bow down because of the presence of Krishna in the heart of the other devotee, and also we give respect to the devotee not because of their body or their wealth or their beauty or whatever. It doesn't really matter what the body of the devotee looks like. It can be very ugly or it can be very beautiful. And the fact that someone is a devotee, that's enough that they deserve all respect, and in that way we don't have these artificial or you would call uh, let's say uh, false types of relationships. The relationship between devotees is very profound if they're fixed up in Krishna consciousness. It's profound in the sense that we don't actually look at the body of the person. We actually know that they're actually very beautiful because of their service. That service uh, to devotees and to Krishna means that someone is very highly advanced and they should be respected in all ways. and a loving relationship can build up as that reciprocal, let's say, relationship develops. Reciprocal means the deity. There's exchanges, six times exchanges of love. You give and receive prashadam. You give and receive endearing thoughts. You give and receive, and you. In other words, you these dadati pat grinanti guyam akyati krichati pumpte bo jayate chaiva sadvida Priti Lakshanam. So Priti Lakshanam means these six types of mutual respect and love between devotees. You give and receive prashadam, you give and receive endearing thoughts, you give and receive, let's say, what is it? The third thing. Anyway.
Gifts.
Yeah, gifts, exactly. Okay. So, today's statement, the Lord cannot tolerate any inconvenience on the part of the devotee. He is therefore famous as Bhaktavatsala. Bhaktavatsala means that he is he's very affectionate and to his devotee. So if we become a genuine devotee of the Lord, engage in his devotional service, and always chant Hare Krishna, Krishna becomes our best friend. And he will help us in every way to make spiritual advancement. And if we fall down, he will also help us to come back very quickly on the path of Krishna consciousness. That's how much Krishna has love for his devotee. He doesn't like to see the devotee fall down, and he'll do everything possible to bring the devotee back. That's the mercy of the Lord. So here it says, in the material world, simply to get a little favor from the goddess of fortune, people observe many rigid regulations of austerity and penance. The Lord cannot tolerate any inconvenience on the part of the devotee. He is therefore famous as Bhaktavatsala. He loves his devotees and will do anything to help them. Okay, so this Krishna consciousness is based on reciprocal relationships of love and devotion. And that devotion is the basis of the love. When you offer something to someone without expecting anything in return and genuinely happy to sacrifice for that person, there's good chance that that is bordering on genuine love. And when it's reciprocal with Krishna, then for sure it is genuine love. And Krishna reciprocates by protecting the devotee, by giving the devotee knowledge by which they can remain in Krishna consciousness. And you have to have knowledge to remain in Krishna consciousness. What kind of knowledge? You have to have spiritual knowledge, understanding the difference between Maya and Krishna. Maya is forgetfulness of Krishna, and Krishna, when you remember Krishna, then there's no Maya. So by chanting Hare Krishna all the time, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And we're remembering Krishna. That's why it's recommended to chant always. And Maya can very easily, let's say, overwhelm the mind of a person by not seeing properly. The best way to see is through hearing. The whole idea of learning is by hearing from bona fide devotees. And by hearing properly from bona fide devotees, we learn to see things properly. But just looking at things with the raw eye without any, let's say, uh, help from, hearing, we get many misunderstandings in life. So, uh, for example, there's this history. There was once a man that was very, very attracted by a woman. And he was always, fawning and trying to, you know, maintain a relationship. And, it was like very nerve wracking for the woman. So finally, he wanted to marry her. He's begging her, and she said, "Okay, but you come back in 1 week, and then I might marry you." So he said, "Okay." So during that week, he was always, trying to call her and talk to her, and she was not answering the phone, and he was always in anxiety. But during that week, she took a lot of laxatives, and she was fasting, and and she kept all of the her stool and urine in a big let's say pail. And when he came back to see her after a week, and he was so excited, he was all set to get married, and she had a shawl over her head, so he couldn't see her. So he said, "Please let me see you." And then and when she opened her head, because she had been fasting and passing stool and everything, she didn't look like she did before. She looked, gaunt, and she was like thinner and so forth. And he said, "What happened to you? Where's your beauty?" And she said, "Oh no, I've saved it for you." He said, "You saved it for me? Where is it?" And she said, "It's in this bucket here." He looked in the bucket, right? And it was all full of stool and urine. So he got shocked and he walked away. So basically, that's a fact. Beauty is skin deep, as they say in English. What's more important is when a person is a devotee, it doesn't matter what their body looks like. It's the fact that they're attached with love and devotion to Krishna, and they're engaging and serving the Lord. That's a beautiful person. Right? It's not that they have high heels on and they have uh, different types of perfumes and so forth and hairdos, etc. It's the beauty is the devotion that one uh, has for Krishna, and the devotional service that one is performing. So everyone is more or less all the uh, sense gratifiers. They're very concerned about the body. Like so, what do? They have all kinds of uh, they take all kinds of pills, and makeup, and uh, they do some exercises, and they do yoga, not for any spiritual purpose, but to make the body look more and more attractive. And this not basically it's a waste of time. And the story of the lady who passed stool and urine for a whole week, uh, and then she looked like she was like thinner and gaunt, and in a sense her beauty had become compromised. So when the man came back to see her, when she showed her face to him, he was shocked. It didn't look like the way she was before. And he said, well, what happened to your beauty? And she said, well, look at it in the bucket here. That's where my beauty is, you know. And that bucket was full of stool and urine. So this is the reality in life, that beauty is only skin deep, right? Like, for example, let's say there's a very beautiful person, either a man or a woman, and then you make a surgical cut right down the middle of their body, and then you open up both sides of the cut, you know, and all of a sudden, what you thought was attractive becomes very horrible, because all you see are the intestines and the blood and the organs and things like that, and you know, immediately you lose your attraction immediately. So therefore, we should not be so interested in the bodily features of a person. In fact, it's actually a warning that if a person, there's a devotee, but the devotee's body is not very attractive at all, like they might have had polio or something, you should not criticize the devotee because of the condition of their body. You should be more interested in what they're saying and what they're doing than rather than what their body looks like. Okay, so let me just read a thing more here. The conclusion is that if one can feed a Brahmana or Vaishnava, it is better than performing hundreds of thousands of sacrifices. Is that what we're reading from? No, I'm sorry. Okay. No, yeah. In the material world, simply to get a little favor from the goddess of fortune, people observe many rigid regulations of austerity and penance. The Lord cannot tolerate any inconvenience on the part of the devotee. He is therefore famous as Bhaktavatsala, means that he's always the friend of the devotee. And here it says that the Lord uh, cannot tolerate any inconvenience on the part of the devotee. Well, if you really want to have a good life, you should become a devotee. And that way, you have the help and love of Krishna. That means that your life is going to become much, much easier than you ever imagined, because the Lord is on your side and He's going to do everything to help you so that you can overcome all the obstacles in material life and go back to Godhead. Haribol. Okay. Any questions? Let me read that verse.
One question.
Okay, yeah.
What is it that makes us to get attracted to the body feature before we look into their actions and words?
Ignorance.
Yeah.
Ignorance. Thinking that, you know, uh, well, as soon as you become attracted to something material, it's you're put into uh, let's say Maya, right? Like, for example, let's say there's a brand new car, so you know it's all polished and looks wonderful, and your car doesn't look as nice as that, right? So the more you keep looking at that car, the more you're convinced that you'll never be happy unless you get that car. So, although the car that you have is taking you from point A to point B, there's nothing wrong with it. But by looking and basically developing an attachment, you finally think that it's, you know, not so nice to have the older car, because the newer car looks really shiny and nice. And when you sit in it, you feel a little proud, and people look at your car, not you, and you look at the car and say, "Oh, what a nice car that is!" Right? So uh, that type of attraction to something material is actually Maya, because the older car is still getting you from point A to point B, right? And that's what the other car is going to do also, right? But you want to, you know, instead of going from point A to point B in a donkey, you want to go from point A to point B in some big, beautiful horse, right? But the donkey can do the same thing as the horse, gets you from one point to another. So therefore, that type of false ego develops and pride develops, right? And eventually, a person goes into complete ignorance, or let's say, illusion about what's the right thing to do, or what's the right thing to have, and so forth. So, for example, when Prabhupada gives the example of a person that's in a rickshaw, and like one of those rickshaws where there's a man that's actually pulling it, right? And 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 then some man comes by, let's say in a Rolls Royce, and the person has the Rolls Royce. He looks with disdain on the what do you call it, the Vangi, who's like pulling the rickshaw with his bare feet, right, going down the street. So the man is, basically looking down on the rickshaw because he's in a nice car. So that type of attitude is basically Maya, and it creates this. What you would call it, eventually it creates some kind of jealousy, hatred, when people are looking down on others because they have a better car, because they have a better house, because they have better this, because they have better that. Right? But actually, everyone, in a sense, is equal because they have a material body that's subject to birth, death, old age, and disease. They're all going to end up dead eventually, and all their uh, different possessions are going to be lost. So a genuine devotee understands what you would call the ephemeralness of material life. Everything's ephemeral. Everything's meaning everything's temporary. You can never hold on to things eternally. Therefore, the devotee is not so interested in having too many opulent things. The devotee tries to have a minimalist approach to life. Just have a few good things, like just have some nice prasadam, and not have any extravagant clothing or extravagant cars or extravagant houses. Or the devotee tries to live in a simple way. Why? Because the more things you have, the more attachments you get, and the more what you would call things you have to take care of. Right. So let's say you buy a really expensive car, right? And let's say you get a Rolls Royce. So would you drive your Rolls Royce to downtown Seattle and park it somewhere, not in a garage, out in the street? Probably you wouldn't do it because someone's jealous. They'll just come by and scratch it, right? And so it's better you drive in with an older car that no one really cares about, right? And that way, and keep the Rolls Royce, at home, and only go to certain places where no one's going to be able to scratch your car. Right? So you see, there's always a downside of being very opulent because there's so many jealous people in the world. So we have to be careful not to fall into that trap. So it's better just to be satisfied with whatever Krishna gives you easily than to always be striving for more and more opulent things that just are entangling and require more and more maintenance. The more things you have, the more maintenance you have to do. Right? Okay.
For clarification.
Huh? Yeah.
Clarification. So when we are under the influence of Maya, we get attracted, or after we are attracted to some object, does Maya kicks in?
Well, there's a story about uh, an ugly man and an ugly woman. And when the ugly man is looking at the face of the ugly woman, he says, I never saw anyone more beautiful than you. You see? So beauty is not really, it's something very subjective.
Okay.
So the ugly man is looking at the ugly woman and he's saying, oh, you're the most beautiful person I've ever seen in my life. Whereas really that's not true. But because he's ugly and she's ugly, that's why he's saying that. Actually, everything is ugly in the material world because it's all temporary. But we think, no, this person's good and that person's not so good, and you make all these decisions or prejudices based on artificial exterior things. Whereas we should look at the heart of the person and hear what the person is talking about. If they're talking nonsense, even if they're the most beautiful person in the world, they're talking nonsense. They're not actually beautiful. They're nonsense. And say so. To judge a person based on their looks is very dangerous, because sometimes great devotees purposely look like they're bums, right? They might not be dressed really nicely and so forth. They might not have a real nice car or whatever. But what you have to judge a person is not by the car or the house, but what they say. And not how they look either. It's what they say, what they're talking about. So if they're talking always about Krishna and always helping other people become Krishna conscious, then they're the most beautiful people. You see. So what's the criterion of beauty? So on one side, you have the beauty pageant, right? So all these ladies are in bikinis and they're sort of showing as much as their skin as possible. And then they choose, which one is the most beautiful one, right? But that's not real beauty. Real beauty is when someone is a genuine devotee and always dedicated to glorifying Krishna. That's a beautiful person. But see, the concept of beauty is all confused in the material world today. It's based on the superficial looks of a person, not in the heart of the person. But we should rather look at the heart of the person. What is their? What do they talk about? And how do they live? And how close they are to Krishna? That should be looked at, not their clothes and their car and their hairdo and their lipstick and perfume and all that other stuff. So you have to be careful. See, this is a very uh, uh, very let's say dangerous culture that we're living in. Like, for example, I remember one time I was walking down the street and there was a lady that was a little bit farther down the street than me, and she had a very nice hairdo and high heels and perfume and all that stuff. I was thinking, oh, this must be a very very attractive lady. So I walked a little faster to see her a little more closely. But when I got up near her and I passed by and I got a quick glimpse of her face, she was a very old lady. But from the back, she looked like a young, beautiful lady, because from the back I could only see the high heels and the hairdo and all that stuff. So you see, and then another time, long time ago, before I was a devotee, I was in this camp, uh, in this summer camp, and in the summer camp, we had to go to, there was some outhouses, one for men, one for women, right?
Mm.
But the men and women outhouses were like right near each other. So, uh, so uh, I was, in the men's outhouse, and I heard someone in the ladies' outhouse, and the there was some lady in the ladies' outhouse, and she might have had diarrhea or something. So there's a lot of you know uh, you know farting and so forth. And I was thinking to myself, oh, the person that's because you could hear, because the outhouses, they were next to each other, very close, right? So you could hear what was happening in the ladies' side, and ladies' side could hear what was happening in the men's side. So when I was doing my thing, and this lady was doing her thing, so I thought, oh my God, this must be the ugliest girl in the whole camp, Because the noise that she was making, passing stool and everything, it was like horrible. So I thought, well, let me see who this is. So when she got out and started walking back to the campsite, I sort of got out also to see who it was. It was one of the prettiest girls in the whole camp. I was imagining it was like one of the ugliest, right? So you see all these false, what you would say, criterions by which we judge things. We should not judge things by, let's say, uh, by uh, superficial, uh, superficial things, but by the heart of the person. So a person might be very ugly, but they might have a beautiful heart and beautiful because they're pure and their desire to serve Krishna.
Mm.
So that's what we should look at, the heart of the person, how much love they have for Krishna, not all these superficial things, because you can be misled by that. And now there's stories about this in Shastra now. Like, for example, um, sometimes there's a demon, but a female demon, but she can transform herself into a beautiful woman to trick someone, right?
Shurpanakha is
Like
one.
Surpanaka. That's Surpanaka. So, uh, and that's a very good example because there are some people that are very, handsome or very beautiful. Putana also, they can transform their body, with all kinds of unguents and yeah, uh, uh, and all of a sudden, uh, we get attracted to them. But when we come closer to them, we realize this is not a beautiful person; it's a demon, right? So we have to be very careful how to judge. You have to judge not with the eyes, but rather with the ears, and see, what this person is saying. So there are sometimes, like very, very attractive people, men or women, but they use foul language all the time. So that really, uh, annuls any attraction to them because they're always talking filthy things. Okay? I mean, that just shows what's in their mind and what's in their heart. So what we have to do is rather judge a person by hearing, not by seeing. So if they're talking nonsense all the time, well, they're a nonsense person. Who cares that they have? Oh, by the way, there's one interesting story I can tell you. There was one devotee. He was always he had been married, he had kids, And then he got divorced. And then he was always thinking about getting married again. And he was sort of, very chubby, and he was like, he wasn't like, Superman, let's put it like that. And he was always talking about, I'm not happy, I have to get married again, and blah, 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 and so forth. So as time went on, he was always, trying to talk to some ladies in the temple, and most of the ladies, they were ignoring him. You know. But then one time it happened that this very, very attractive lady uh, became somewhat attracted to him, right? And I was very interested, and I went and I talked to that lady. I said, what do you see that's so attractive and so and so? And she said, oh, it's his legs. I said, his legs? What do you mean? Oh, they're so fat and uh, and she said, I'm just attracted to his legs. And I was thinking to myself, how long is that attraction going to last? It didn't last long. But you see how whimsical people can be, right? She was attracted to his legs. They're a little fatty, and I don't know what it was. And he's one of those persons that puts his stogie up higher, so you can see, like half of his leg. Yeah. That was, and then there was the question that we're going to get married, right? And then uh, after the lady said, "Well, I think I would like to marry you," then he went overboard, you know, and he was so anxious, he tried to kiss her, and this is a true story, and then all of a sudden she said, "Get away from me." It's not like this, and I don't like this, and then it was over, right? And then after that, I had asked her, I said, what was attractive and so and so? I said, well, I was attracted to his legs. So it's silly on both sides, his attraction and her attraction. It's just silliness. So we have to, and these people are devotees. It's not like they're outside karmis, but you can see how dangerous Maya is, and how people can become attracted to things that are actually silly and or disgusting.
Maharaj, if we see certain things, differentiate them, what is beautiful, what is not beautiful. At the time, we don't say there's Maya working, but the minute you get attracted, you judge, you carried away. That means then you are under the influence of Maya. So seeing things beautiful, non-beautiful is natural, but the minute you get attached to something and carried away is Maya.
Well, let's see. Judge not that ye be not judged. This is a saying in the Bible. The criterion of judgment is through hearing, not by seeing. You can make many mistakes if you just judge based on what you see, but you can judge better on what you hear about a person. So you have to be patient and not judge right away. You have to see what the person is talking about. They're talking nonsense. They can be the most beautiful person in the world. If they're talking nonsense, they're a nonsense person. So we have to judge not by seeing, but by hearing. Now, Prabhupada, he was always talking about Krishna. So that means he's a very beautiful person. He's the most attractive person. He's talking about Krishna. But he was an older person. He was in late 70s, and but he was very beautiful because of his ability to teach us who Krishna is. So that's the real beauty, not the skin beauty. Because beauty is only skin deep. Let's say there's a very beautiful person, right? But you put them on the surgical table and then you make a big cut from the neck right down to the stomach, and then you open it up. All of a sudden, you lost the attraction to the body because now you're seeing the heart and the liver and the blood and things like that. So that beauty part is like skin deep. It's only like, the epidermis is only what is it, like not even a quarter inch, right? So it's very, let's say, illusory thing when beauty is only skin deep. But if they have a beautiful heart and they are always glorifying Krishna, that's not skin deep. That's going right to the heart of the person, and that's much better. Right? So we have to see with our ears, not necessarily with our eyes. Okay.
So how do we manage, Maharaj? Some, like say, some devotees are they to worship Krishna. But in terms of the social situation, like maybe smelling and not good. And
Well, you can, as a friend, you can take that person aside and say, "Look, Prabhu, Prabhupada said, you have to bathe at least twice a day, and if you don't, have a washing machine, you can use my washing machine, for your clothes." And they get the message, like, okay. So you don't go up to them and say, "Look, you stink." You don't want to do it like that, but you offer service to help them because for some reason or other, some people have an odor.
Yeah.
It's just because of their their sweat or whatever, and they just have this continual odor. They just smell like that. So that's like a congenital thing. So you can't really blame them. Yeah, but there are other people that they don't really bathe regularly and they don't like wash their clothes or whatever, and they always have a bad smell. So that can be remedied because we should always, bathe at least once a day. That's for sure, but ideally twice or three times a day, and only put on clean clothes, right? And brush your teeth and so forth. That's the life of a devotee, right? They have to be clean. So there are people, they don't like to take baths. They may only bathe once a week or once a month. Like French people in the earlier days, they never bathed. They only used perfume, and they didn't have toilets. I mean, the rich people, they didn't have toilets, so they would just go outside of the room where they would, sleep or whatever, and they'd pass right on the marble floor of Versailles. Versailles is beautiful, huh?
Palace of Versailles.
Yeah, Palace of Versailles. So they would just go outside and pass right on the floor, right outside the door of their room, and someone would come and clean it.
Put perfume and then clean it.
Huh?
Put perfume and clean it.
There's so much innovation in perfumes in Paris.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Maharaj, you always say, because for Krishna, one of the main principles for Krishna first one is cleanliness.
Yes.
So that they have to make.
Cleanliness is next to holiness. To be very clean. Clean in mind, of course, and real cleanliness, and clean physically.
Told about Versailles.
What?
Until you told about the Versailles Palace, we didn't know that there were no toilets in there.
Yeah. Well, this is, 200, 300 years ago. Versailles is a beautiful place, but they didn't have any toilets.
But it always used to stink, right?
I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't know. It's written like that? Oh, you're looking at it now? Oh, okay. Oh, why don't you read that a little bit? Let's hear about how much it stinks.
Hardly toilets at Versailles, and with our court counting several thousand people, it turned out to be more than a little problem. The servants, the commoners who came to look at their monarch, Even the aristocrats would occasionally relieve themselves in corners and courtyards,
Oh.
though this was not as often as has later been implied. Visitors, including Horace Walpole, complained about the awful smell that hung over everything. Even the gardens were not free for the hideous odor. Thanks to the many reports of
In other words,
ambassadors,
they're passing stool everywhere. The people.
thanks to the many reports of ambassadors and foreign visitors, the splendid palace became known as one of the filthiest in the world, not exactly what had been expected.
You know, Versailles, a beautiful place. If you ever go there, it's, you know, beautiful. But you see, you know, like 200 years ago or 100 years ago, it was actually a disgusting place.
Yeah.
Although the building was beautiful, but it was disgusting because people were just passing stool anywhere. They didn't have toilets. And, you know, most people in France, and, you know, if you go back, you know, 150 years ago, 200 years ago, they just had a little bowl and they would fill it up with some water and just, you know, basically wash their face and their hands. And that was about it, you know. They didn't even wash their armpits or anything. And that was their bath, you know. They didn't have showers. They didn't have, you know, toilets and things like that. You'd have to go, I mean, 3 or 4 stories up or down to get to the toilets. So sometimes they just, you know, I don't know what they did, but it was not very hygienic. Let's put it like that. And like what you're saying right now, yeah, there's a stink that comes from that type of, let's say, architecture where they build the building is beautiful, but they don't have any toilets. So what happens, you know, they're going to have to pass stools somewhere. And
But it looks like in the 18th century they added the toilets.
18th, I mean the 1700s.
So the palace was built in 1624.
Yeah.
After like a half century and a half, that's when in the 18th century they added the toilets.
Added toilets. Okay. But did they have
The sewage thing.
did they have the sewage?
Again, that's
I mean, you can put a toilet, but if you don't connect it to the sewer, it's you know, there's no difference. This is your homework. You find out if they connected it to a sewer. Okay, we'll stop right there. Are there any questions?
One last question, Maharaj.
Yeah.
So regarding the Chandala, classification, like if somebody is born in a Chandala family, and as long as they're become a devotee, we don't judge them as Chandala. But if a person, I heard stories from the past that a person does the butchering, but also worships Krishna, and he is considered to be a pious person. Is that possible to Maharaj, or is it just a made-up story?
Where did you hear that story?
I forgot what that's
In the Bhagavatam or in
hearing
in a comic book?
not definitely not some books, Maharaj. Either through hearing in some motivational videos or something like that.
Yeah.
There was a judging who is the best. There was a butcher. He cut
Yeah.
animals every day.
Blood
But his conscience was more pure, and he was just the better person than a Brahmana.
Mhm.
So I was wondering, it's just made up a story that possible at all? Like, you do this cutting the animals, but in your consciousness be pure at all. It's possible at all.
Well, that's possible. That's very possible. There are many stories like that.
So,
Yeah.
that's right.
There is also the Brahmana and prostitute story.
Yeah.
Wherein like the Brahmana was doing all the worship, but then
He's thinking about the prostitute.
And then whereas the prostitute maybe
He's thinking about Krishna. Yeah. No, but there were prostitutes in where in Krishna's time there were prostitutes and they were devoted. The prostitutes were devotees, but that was their way of living. but there were prostitutes who were devotees. And Prabhupada says that, having prostitutes is part of, let's say, good management in a society, because there's always going to be men that are not satisfied with their wife. So the prostitute gives them service so that they don't go around and defile, young girls, things like that. So there's always has been prostitutes in the history of Vaishnavism. And sometimes the prostitutes turn out to be pure devotees, although that's their, way of making a living. But actually, they're devotees also.
Marriage prostitutes make sense. It's self-inflicting in the first place. But butchering is you're inflicting on another entity. Can they be ever a devotee actually? And they're harming the.
Well, no, I was a butcher. My family had a supermarket, and I would work, in the meat, counter. For a couple of years, I did that, and then I decided never to do it again. But the a person can become a devotee from any position,
Yeah.
right?
But once you
but
become a
you cannot
devotee,
You give up.
stop.
You give up.
Even in the butcher's case also, both cannot go together, right, Maharaj? Harming entities and becoming a devotee.
Or
You don't
staying
see
a
those
devotee.
cases.
Yeah, staying a devotee and also
Butcher.
If you become a devotee, you would stop all those bad habits.
Okay, so these stories actually used to tell it's a living profession. It's okay to do that and also be a devotee parallelly
Who said that?
in these moral stories.
Really?
that, Maharaj.
Those are probably made up because
Written by who?
I don't know who. I mean, like Panchatantra stories or these are moral stories in India. You'll have book by, I don't think these are bona fide book, but people will write stories where to show that you can be doing anything, but you're doing it out of good consciousness and sincerity. That means you can still be a devotee, and also they'll also show some people who are in the mafia or drug dealers, but they are actually devotees. They show mostly movies and like that. They'll show all these kinds of.
That's why we shouldn't watch movies. You get the wrong impressions by watching the movies.
but in Puranas we have Bhakta Kannappa,
Yeah.
and then even Valmiki. Bhakta Kannappa, the story is that he was a hunter,
Yeah.
and but he saw sages who were worshipping the Lord, but he only had meat to offer.
Yeah.
So he would offer the meat.
You would offer meat to the devotees.
No, to the Lord.
To the Lord.
And he became a devotee. I mean, obviously, but once he became a devotee,
He
the
stopped.
knowledge comes.
Yeah.
Then he would stop.
But he only has access to meat, right? So he would continue to offer meat.
He was giving the only thing
that
he
is at
had.
that time. At that time. But once he became a devotee, he didn't continue killing. So that is the thing.
In the movies, they don't show.
Because they only give that
show
example.
Is parallel. They happen parallel. He hunts and he offers meat every day.
Oh yeah.
Until he is kind of liberated, taken by Shiva, Lord Shiva.
Well, see, you have shastras in mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance. So those are shastras that are in the mode of ignorance. Yeah. It's for ignorant people.
Okay. Better than nothing.
Huh? It's better than nothing. Yeah. Yeah. So there are shastras we don't read. They're in the mode of ignorance.
So that means they don't have the knowledge yet. So at least they were continuing with the devotion. But the moment you get the knowledge, you cannot use that to justify. That's what some of these people, they try to justify not changing their behavior, even though the knowledge is there. That harming other animals.
Yeah, it's like they try to treat the mode of goodness, scriptures, and mode of ignorance equivalent on the same level. That is the problem.
Well, There's shastras for the people in the mode of ignorance, shastras in the mode of passion, and shastras in the mode of goodness. And there's transcendental shastra. So spiritual life is always what you would call progressive. You can start at the lowest level, but gradually progress to the highest level. So, therefore, the Vedic knowledge is like a big tent. Everybody can fit into it, right? But there's progressiveness. You can go from the lowest level to the highest level gradually by the right association, right? So the lowest people are all never rejected.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they can be rehabilitated by associating with genuine devotees over time. And that's what Krishna consciousness is. Everybody comes to Krishna consciousness, they're not saints. They're sinners. Most of us were sinners, big time sinners. But we became rehabilitated by association. Yeah.
Yeah, I used to hold the animals when their parents were butchering.
Yeah.
The legs and everything tight. I still have memories holding it so tight.
Well, those are the memories you can forget. You don't want to remember those enemies, those reminiscences when you're, in your deathbed. You want to forget those things. Haribo. Thank you very much.
One question.
Yes.
You said, see with your ears. If you have blind people, right? They cannot see anything. They can only see through their ears.
Yeah.
So are they in a better place just because of that?
Are they in a better place? Well, they can't see movies. They can't see pornography. So in a sense, they're in a better place. Yes.
Because when it comes to Krishna, I think
that's if they're hearing. That's if they're hearing the right things.
Yeah.
But we shouldn't, judge them because they can't see. I mean, there are a lot of people that have eyes, but they're in complete illusion. Right? They don't see Krishna, although Krishna is everywhere. And then you have people who are blind, but they can see Krishna by hearing about him. Yeah. So the best way is through hearing. You can get more truth by hearing from bona fide persons, not by nonsense people. So you see, like someone like Hitler, he was like mesmerizing hundreds and millions of people by speeches. He was a very, dramatic speaker. Yeah. And then people got completely, in Maya listening to him. Now, how do they get the attention of people? They have an enemy. They identify an enemy and convince people that this group are enemies, and then they get followers who believe them that this group of people are enemies. So the enemies in Hitler's world were like gypsies and Jews and so forth. It was not only the Jews; there were other people that they killed because they were not, and people who were physically, deformed. They took those people and they killed them. They didn't kill only the Jews. They killed a whole bunch of different people that they thought were not worthy of being human beings. Black people also. So, they wanted everyone to be, tall, blue eyes, and, although Hitler himself was not tall with blue eyes, but he would always talk about, the Aryan race. It's all nonsense philosophy, Aryan race. What does that mean? You know, well, they're supposed to be tall and blonde hair and blue eyes. You know, so the Polish are like that. You know, but yet Hitler, you know, killed a lot of Poles. Although they look more Aryan than Hitler. You know, so you see that everything's all mixed up. Material worlds. One day, I was with Prabhupada, and he said, "In this world today," and he went like this with his hands. Everything is mixed. It's not
upside down.
You know, all boggle. I think he used that word, boggle. Yeah, so we have to unmix everything by reading the shastras and discussing things, and you know, praying to Krishna, please don't let me fall into Maya. That should be our number one prayer. Please, Krishna, don't let me fall into Maya. Haribol. Okay. Hare Krishna. All glories to Prabhupada.
So this is Vijamani Prabhu.
Nice to meet you. Hare Krishna. Bye.
From San Diego.
Okay. You come from down south. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you. I hope your Sankirtan is going well. Yeah.